right, let's talk breastfeeding for working mothers. Of course, we all understand that breast milk is the ideal food for the baby as it contains all the nutrition that he or she needs in the first 6 months of their lives. However, for working mothers, one factor which often discourages them from breastfeeding or giving up once they return to work is how to balance breastfeeding with their tight working schedules. So the question is, just how practical is exclusive breastfeeding for working moms, who some of them don't have the luxury of a 3-month maternity leave or even a nursing session at their workplaces? Well, we unpack all that right here on Your World. My name is Winnie Lubembe, but as per usual, let's begin with the COVID-19 numbers. Of course, like we always say, we're not out of the woods yet. The pandemic is still here with us. So how are we looking as far as the numbers? Well, up until now, 550,643,002. This is the total number of confirmed COVID-19 cases across the globe. And then 526,284,419 total number of recoveries. But unfortunately, we've lost 6,353,680 people to COVID-19. And this is the global figures. But let's come back to the country. And according to the health ministry, up until now, of course, the numbers of those persons who have been infected is at 332,898. And of course, total number of recoveries stands at 323,455. But unfortunately, again, we've lost 5,652 people. And that is to COVID-19. And that tells us that we still have a lot of work to do as far as COVID is concerned. Make sure that we observe all the protocols that have been laid aside to make sure that at the end of the day we protect ourselves and those who surround us from contracting the virus, but also sort of like halts the spread of the same. Of course, the health ministry reintroduced some of these measures just recently. So it's up to us to take personal responsibility. If you have not been vaccinated, I mean, you might as well just go and get vaccinated, all right? And if you are not observing some of these other protocols like wearing your mask and so forth, again, it is up to us to do the same, all right? So let's switch back and focus on the conversation of the day. But before that, of course, there's a question that we're asking you today, and that is the 3 months maternity leave, is it practical for the 6 months exclusive breastfeeding? Not maternity leave. I'm still on maternity leave because Roots Party presidential candidate says mothers, as soon as they get pregnant, they start getting paid, okay? But the question of the day today is 6 months exclusive breastfeeding practical for working mothers? That is what we're asking you today. Is 6 months exclusive breastfeeding practical for working moms? And that is as far as the transition and balancing and all those things. So feel free to interact with us on at NTV Kenya at Lubembe_Winnie. Remember, the hashtag to use is Your World, all right? Of course, let me introduce my guests for the day, beautiful women who are here with us on set. Karibuni sana, so happy to have you. And of course, we have Ruth Kaima, who is a working mom of 2. How are you doing this morning?
Thanks.
Welcome to the show. You look lovely. And of course, we're glad that you are with us, as well as Josephine Munene, who's maternal, infant and child nutrition specialist. How are you doing this morning? Perfect person to also help us, go through this conversation. I'm just going to throw it to you, first of all. Ruth, and Josephine as well. You know what Roots Party presidential candidates, what Jacoya just said in a conversation with my colleague Mark Masai, that as soon as a woman gets pregnant, you start getting paid up until when a child, is what, around 4 years, What do you make of this?
I loved that statement. I was like, can he backdate? So that for those of us who've already gone before, that we should get ours in arrears. It's a wonderful proposition.
And it's actually quite practical. Well, maybe not the pregnancy bit, but maybe to be able to have more flexi time, even when you're pregnant. But definitely when it comes to postpartum, you have countries like Scandinavian countries where a woman gets 12 months off and it's paid depending on what she was earning, depending on her level of work. And even if she wasn't working, she'll still get a stipend for that maternity leave for up to 1 year. And her partner can join her on that leave for 11, 12 months as well. So his proposals are not impractical, actually.
All the mothers, all the women are happy today to hear that. All right, but again, let me just start with you, just fade, right? As far as the whole aspect of transition, because again, pregnancy, carrying life in your womb as a woman, I think it's the most magical, beautiful thing. But most of the times, and especially after delivery, you have to go back to work, whether you're running a business. It's usually a very difficult mumbo jumbo of an event for so many women. So what does that look like? What is this, all this? Are there preparations that people need to make? What does that transition look like?
Ideally, yes. And if you have the privilege and fortune to be able to even be in an employed job where you have the 3 months of maternity leave, you can start preparing. You can start preparing by understanding what is my baby's feeding schedule, how much do I need to start storing so that when I go back to work, I have a small stash. It doesn't have to be like a whole freezer of milk, but I have a small stash as a buffer. And then because when you go back to work, ideally you should express milk at the same intervals that you fed your baby.
Okay.
Because the body is very rudimentary. It is very basic. It is basically what you remove in terms of milk is what is replaced. Oh, wow. So the body is not going to say, okay, I left my baby and when I was at home, I was feeding my baby every 3 hours. So let me still make enough milk, whatever that quantity is, 1 liter a day. Let me just keep it and store it. And then when I go back home, I'll be able to express the entire 1 liter for tomorrow. We don't work like that. I wish we did. Yeah. So you still have to be very consistent, very dedicated, and remove milk frequently. Yeah. So that is a mental preparation, physical preparation. It takes a lot. That transition back to work is not what people think, oh, I'll be ready within 1 week. It's literally something that moms start thinking about almost. My clients is 1 month after giving birth, when your hormones have started settling, I already get calls. What do I need to do now? Yeah. How do I build up a stash? And the anxiety begins from then, because it's something that's very important if you're to meet that 6 months exclusive. Right. Yes.
Right. And I think this is a case for you. You know, where you're like, you know what, I struggled, first of all, for the 6 months exclusive breastfeeding. And I think it's a struggle for most moms. You know, there's some who do not have enough milk, some do not have milk at all, and you're telling this mom to make sure that they exclusively breastfeed for 6 months. What was the journey like for you?
For me, just like she says, it takes a lot of mental preparation, which I hadn't factored in.
You were not ready.
So by the time I had my first child, I'd worked in reproductive health and nutrition for almost 10 years. Wow. And I'd been training health workers, I'd been training moms, I'd been supporting in the field, more in remote areas. So I took it for granted. Yeah. So I thought, well, I have all the theory.
Did you feel at some point, I got this? Like
I felt I had it. I was extremely ready. Yeah. Until the baby was put in my arms. Okay. And then I realized it's both a science and an art. Yeah. You begin to learn the baby, you begin to learn yourself. No one warns you about how physically demanding it is. Yeah. And I started to think, what have I been doing to moms? Yeah. It changed my whole practice. No one tells you about the mental fatigue it brings about. I mean, because like she's mentioned, breast milk goes through a child's system, and like formula, formula will give you 4 hours. Yeah. Breast milk is so pure, they absorb it 1.5 hours later. So around the clock, 24 hours, every 1.5 hours, my baby was on the breast. I was going mad. I couldn't sleep. You're expected to breastfeed this child 1.5 hours. I was in school. I was doing my postgraduate at that time. I was writing a thesis. Hey. I was working. So half the time I felt like I was going mad. No one tells you. In fact, I think when we talked before, I told you, I think I spent a lot of the time in the bathroom crying.
Crying, yeah. Because I can imagine. I mean,
literally, like, it's heavy. Yeah.
And even sometimes, like, forget even a child. Like sometimes balancing work and life, sometimes is usually crazy. So you can imagine, you're a mom. You, of course, you're working. You're in school. You're an author. How are you able to do all that?
Honestly, I think one thing we have undermined as a society, as we have talked about breastfeeding, is the importance that community plays. A mother cannot do it alone. No. And for me, I was extremely privileged to have what she talks about, paid maternity leave. Of course, with my first, I was in between jobs. Okay. Then I started working just as he hit 3 months. But I had such a supportive community through my husband. He was very hands-on. So I didn't feel alone. my parents were extremely critical for me, my sister and my brother. But one other thing I'd mention is also how I was privileged to have care, which I felt almost guilty about, especially because I work in very remote areas where the healthcare systems are not so good. Then I came to give birth in Nairobi at a very high-end, middle-income kind of hospital. And then I realized how you establish breastfeeding is very important, because many women struggle, many of our clients and patients struggle in the first few weeks because of pain. And when you don't establish breastfeeding within the first 2-3 weeks, it becomes a struggle. It becomes difficult to make it up. So within the first 2-3 weeks, if someone is really struggling with the pain of a cesarean section or a vaginal birth, whichever way you give birth is pain. But I thank God for my doctor. She is one of the best in pain care management. She understands it. Dr. Angela Chekoko, there I was comfortable. That helps a lot.
And of course, you know, talking about the fact that you had that privilege to at least have some time off from work and take care of your baby, exclusively breastfeed at that time. But we also don't. We also have women who, again, do not have such privileges. You know, if I can say. So for them, I mean, some, and we've seen some who give birth, for example, today, and in the next 2 weeks they have to go back to either work, businesses, or whatever it is, just to make sure that they fend for the family, take care of you know, themselves as well. So at this point, what are the options then for them? Because you might find that this woman does not have the luxury of a breast pump, right? Cannot afford formula, because formula is just on another level. So then in this case, in terms of like substituting, do whatever it is just to make sure that the baby is still breastfed, because the baby does not understand that mommy has gone until she comes home when I get to breastfeed.
And that's where that community comes in, like she's talking about. So and especially in line with this year's World Breastfeeding Week theme is educate and support. So step up for breastfeeding by educating and supporting. So these mothers, most of them don't even know that you can express milk, because even by the time they deliver, within 24 hours they have been discharged, because they've delivered at a health center. That health center probably is already understaffed. So now at a community level, if they have people like the community health volunteers or a health worker who goes to visit them every day to check, do you understand how to put your baby on the breast? Exactly what she was saying.
We always assume that it's normal.
Yes, like, and it is not. Natural, like she said, breastfeeding is actually an art and it is a learned skill. But if these mothers have someone who goes there, someone who is well trained, who goes there to support, do you know how to put your baby on the breast? Is there adequate milk exchange? Meaning, is there milk coming out and is the baby actually taking milk? Because like we said, whatever milk is removed is that is replaced. So a mom, even if she has to go back in 2 weeks, she cannot have adequate supply if she did not already have a good foundation to bring that supply up. And consistently. But with this kind of support, she can, because then she'll also be told, you see, in the same way that you're feeding your baby, start hand expressing. And that is the best and most efficient way of removing milk. It's as close to the baby being on the breast and pulling milk. So hand expression is what works for any mom. But especially for moms that do not have access to now those innovations and modern things like breast pumps. Number 2, does she understand how to safely remove this milk and store it?
Storage,
you see?
Because that's key.
Exactly, that is also key, because milk does get spoiled. You know, it's just like any other milk. And allowing them to understand that how long can milk stay at room temperature? What measures can she take? Maybe she can put it in a sufuria with cold water in the coolest part of the room. You know, if she has a clay pot, she can do the same thing. Anything that will reduce the temperature so that bacteria does not multiply quickly. That is why we try to keep the milk cooler. So she does not have access to a fridge, right? So it's also to just empower her with the knowledge. Give them knowledge. Knowledge is power. We keep saying that. And it is that. But within their resources and what they have accessible. But it is very possible.
Absolutely. And I like the fact that you brought in an aspect of hand expressing, which I think we used to see that a long time ago. Probably someone is watching us and thinking, wait, what? People do that? I mean, you can still do that at the end of the day, because we want, again, to promote exclusive breast milk for this baby, at least for the first 6 months. So again, for you, at the end of the day, you tried formula, couldn't work?
No, I didn't try formula at all.
No?
No.
Okay.
And I just want to go back to something she said.
Yeah.
And for me, there's an issue of policy there in what we are saying, in that we have a very good breastfeeding policy, but it really applies to the mother who is employed in probably a white-collar job. Yeah. We then take care of what happens to the casual worker, what happens to the person who, for every day I go out, I need to make my money for the day. Yeah. And I think the policy needs to actually be revised to take that into account.
Absolutely.
But coming back to the issue of formula, formula is very expensive in this country. It is. And when you look at, in the scheme of things, of course, breast milk will always be superior. Then formula comes next. But when you look at a tin costing what, about 1,800, say 2,000. And when I measured with my first child, I was kind of in between jobs. Yeah. So even for a middle-class person, 2,000 shillings every day translates to about 30,000 on your budget. Yeah. So sometimes you actually don't have the option. You don't. So you find people going into breast milk or goat milk, which also have their place, depending on how your situation is. But it's not always a feasible option for everyone to have formula. And that's another thing that possibly in policy we need to look at, because we don't only struggle with formula for babies who are at home, we struggle with special feeds in the hospitals for babies who have certain issues here and there, and we don't have those formulas in the hospital. And our policy needs to say that it should be there, it should be free for a mother who is struggling. Yeah. That if I can't produce enough breast milk for whatever reason, I can pick a tin. If my baby is special needs, for whatever reason, I need special blends, which we tend to use and are so expensive, 4,000, 8,000 shillings per tin. They need to be available within policy.
Absolutely. Yeah. So revise some of this policy. I mean, to cater for everyone.
Yeah, and the essential drug list in the country doesn't look into preterm babies, then look into low birth weight, then look into babies whose mothers have died. But to me, that is an essential drug that should come onto the lists as we are making them.
Absolutely. And of course, for also some mothers who, number one, would also struggle with that aspect of, I do not have milk at all, or for children who, unfortunately, their moms passed on, especially, you know, at birth. There's a conversation around milk donation. So I'd want you to just, you know, chime into the same very quickly, because we're going to need to go on a break in the next, 2 minutes or so.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a milk bank that was, the human milk bank that was launched, the pilot at Pumwani in 2019, right? And it was quite successful. So they were collecting milk for preterm babies, actually at-risk babies, from mothers who were patients there, but full-term baby mothers, who already had excess. And that has to be, so there are some caveats, even when we have informal milk sharing, which is actually a very big thing globally and in Kenya. So the one thing that if you're donating milk, you have to make sure that you already have enough for your own child before you donate. So that happened in Pumwani, and for them it's more, more professional, more formal, because they pasteurize, they make sure that they screen for infectious diseases, you know. They make sure that they check whether or not that mother has a healthy lifestyle, low risk, you know. So no alcohol, no drugs. They're free from communicable diseases. So yes, the milk bank is there, and hopefully it will be scaled, because the pilot was quite successful, but it is expensive. Even when you look at countries like South Africa, the next country in sub-Saharan Africa with a very progressive human milk banking system, it took them a while to set it up. And that's where we Kenyans had to go and get training from them. If you look at the UK, who have private and national milk banks, even for them, most milk banks are in the hospitals. So human milk banking is not an easy thing, but I do hope it's going to become more prevalent in Kenya to the point where communities can start, community members can start donating, so that other community members can also have access. So not just hospital-based, which is very important, yes, but also in the community where we cannot afford the formula, where we know there's a generous number of mothers out there who have that extra milk, who want to donate, but they don't have the channels to do it safely. So it's definitely something, again, that the government needs to explore.
Absolutely. And can we just briefly talk about some of the risks that, you know, might be there, especially when it comes to the informal, you know, donating aspect of the same? Because I'm pretty sure you've had this where maybe an auntie or just a neighbor even, you know, hears a baby crying. We're like, oh, takes the baby, puts them on the breast, and then that's it. So can you just talk about some of these things and what people really need to know about this?
So wet nursing, what you're referring to is wet nursing, is actually very common. Yeah. I think now after communicable diseases like hepatitis and HIV became very prevalent, then yes, we had to take a step back. Yeah. But even now when I speak to community health workers and volunteers, they still talk about the way the children are taken back to their grandmothers. Their grandmother starts nursing the baby because the baby is crying. Then the grandmother relactates. Or you find that an aunt who has, sisters who have delivered at more or less the same time, one is struggling, so the other one is like, I will breastfeed, and that is fine because that is within a trusted circle. Okay. You know, so when it comes to the wider circle where we're talking about strangers who are sharing now milk, I think the most important thing is to remember, always screen, ask for tests, whether or not, and now tests are very cheap, so for those communicable diseases, there are very many questionnaires online on this, what is your lifestyle? You know, it has to be a low-risk lifestyle. Is the baby full-term? Because also milk changes, right? The composition of milk changes based on the age of the baby. Yes, you're still going to get the same nutrients, but a newborn and someone who's donating for a 6-month-old, the composition might be different. It's still better than formula, but it's also good to try and match babies who are at the same age, you know? Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's take a break. But of course, when we come back, since today our focus is mostly on working moms in that aspect of transition and how do you balance the same to make sure that your baby still gets the best, and that is as far as breast milk is concerned. We have a conversation after the break. We'll be looking at the working place, policy as far as breastfeeding is concerned. But of course, we'd also want to understand what kind of support is important. Yes, have the lactation station, but is that everything that is needed? That is what we'll be focusing on the second part of this conversation. Stay with us. This is Your World.
For the 1 year that we've raced, we learned a lot about the vehicles, the new driving style we have to implement on these cars. They're very modern. They're new technology, so we also have to move on with times. We're not stuck with our Subarus. I've just been picking and implementing whatever I've been learning throughout my couple of years in motorsport. I'm also excited to mingle with the rest of the drivers. We have a driver in our class from Paraguay. We have Martin Prokop, we have Gaurav Gill from India. Hopefully get to interact with them more and also learn a bit more. For the WRC, I want a class win, of course. But of course, I want to get to the end of the event. So I have to keep that into consideration. So I have to play my tactics and my strategy. I really admire the team. I'm very happy with the team. And with, of course, Safaricom coming on board, it's just made life so much easier. So I'm really proud to carry the brand for Safaricom, and also I'm really happy on how amazing Safaricom is with their connectivity, and also, you know, it's not just we stick the brand on our cars, it's also, you know, we're also using M-Pesa services wherever we go through Africa, and it's really superb, and they've been fantastic, and we're really gunning Team Safaricom.
Kenya National Blood Transfusion under the Ministry of Health invites you for the Damu Kenya Conference on 28th to 30th June 2022 at the Windsor Hotel and Country Club under the theme Transforming Blood Transfusion and Transplant Services for Improved Health Outcomes in Kenya and the region.
Over 15 million members are transforming Africa. Equity, Karibu member.
All right, welcome back. Glad you're still with us. The show is Your World, and today, of course, is a special focus on working moms, and this is as far as breastfeeding is concerned. And the question that we're asking you today is exclusive breastfeeding, that is for 6 months, practical for working moms. Once again, is the 6 months exclusive breastfeeding practical for working moms? Keep tweeting at NTV Kenya at Lubembe_Winnie. I'll be looking at your feedback, but we have one Miss_Irene who says no. So Miss Irene, tell us why. Why do you feel it's not practical for working moms? And there will be something more of your feedback as we continue with the conversation. But remember, we said when we come back, of course, we'll be looking at the workplace breastfeeding policy since we're focusing on working moms today. So what exactly does that look like? What does the policy say? Well, let's take a look. So the policy says, and this is the workplace breastfeeding policy, where it says, first of all, it should provide at least 3 months, this is the employer, should provide at least 3 months paid maternity leave according to the Employment Act of 2007, but at the same time help to reassure breastfeeding female employees that their participation in the workforce is compatible with their reproductive function. All right, very important. And then the policy continues to say, and of course, it should actually outline the workplace provisions to enable female employees to maintain breastfeeding. For example, breastfeeding breaks and facilities for support of breastfeeding. I think this is where we really want to put off emphasis on, but at the same time also highlight the employer's commitment to helping workers to achieve work-life balance through flexible working arrangements such as job sharing, flexi time, and working from home, which you've seen a lot of people embracing, especially now. But at the same time, so provide a lactation station, right? But what exactly should it be or look like? Well, it should be shielded from view and be free from intrusion from co-workers. It should be clean, quiet, private, and warm, and not be a bathroom or a toilet, all right, which is important. I should have a lockable door, have a wash basin, have a fridge for storing expressed milk, have a provision for an electric outlet and lighting, and of course, also have a chair and a table and a clean space to store the milk, like we said, all right? But what are the benefits for the same? Well, according to the mother, this is no, to the employer. Let's start with the employer, then we'll talk about the employee. So to the employer, of course, the benefits include improved retention of skills and experience, reduced recruitment costs, loyalty of employees, increased productivity, satisfaction, and resilience of the employee. At the same time, reduced absenteeism due to improved child and maternal health, right? But what about the employee, that is the breastfeeding mom? What exactly are some of the benefits? Well, it contributes to improved job security of female employees, retention of skills and experience, leading to improved performance, improved productivity, hence satisfaction and self-esteem, improved health of the child and employee, better stress management, decreased risk of diabetes, breast and ovarian cancer, amongst so many other benefits as well. All right, and this is both to the employee and to the employer. But I have a question and this is to Ruth, right? So have a lactation station, which is equally important. This policy is in place, but is that enough? You know, just having a lactation, because for you, you've worked in in different places, but you cited an example of two different workplaces where, again, in terms of the support, it was very much different, right? You want to take us through your experience and of course, that question of just having the lactation station, is that enough kind of a support that working moms should be getting?
I strongly believe that having a policy is a good thing.
It really is.
But a policy that does not affect the mind and the heart of the implementer then means nothing.
Yes.
So you may have, so I've had, like you said, two different experiences. Right now, I'm actually trying to get to 6 months mark with a newborn.
Nice. Yes.
I'm in the struggle
5 months right
currently.
Now. Yeah.
But with my first, I got into a workplace when he was just coming into about 3 months onto a new project. And with my work, humanitarian work, we travel.
Yes.
And I get into the organization and I say, we have a breastfeeding, a lactation room. Beautiful place.
Yeah.
But now what I mean, when policy does not affect the heart and the mind of the people, is here is the breastfeeding room, but every time I step out to the breastfeeding room, your colleagues are looking at you like, but why? Is she slacking off? And when you're in a male-dominated field, you may be at the boardroom table, and the meeting is going on longer. You're the only lady, you're lactating, and someone feels like breastfeeding break is a waste of time.
Right.
You're slowing down the team. So the room may be there.
There's a bit of stigma.
But if the stigma within the employee circle is there, then I'm unable to feel free to actually use the room. And like Josephine said, if I need to empty my breast every 3 hours, that's quite a lot at work. But our policies, when they now, if you translate the national policy into the HR policy, if you look at very good workplaces, they talk about 1 hour breastfeeding time. Does that translate to 3 hours, every 3 hour frequency? No. Then you look at what is outside of the policy of the lactation room. Do I have enough rest? What time do I need to come into work? So many mothers end up trying to say, this 1 hour lactation time I've been given in the HR policy and my lunch time, are the 2 hours I'll either come in later or I'll skip lunch so that I can pump. And I remember a time when I was traveling so much and I'd go with my baby on the road. And I had a very nice nanny. Like, Helen is amazing. She's okay with dealing with breast milk and its storage and heating it up. Not every maid is, by the way.
That's true.
Mark that. Some feel like it's disgusting. But she would do it. So we'd be on the road together. And I remember one time being in a meeting, standing up to get water and passing out. The next thing I realized, I was in the hospital. So I had had issues with my pressure since I gave birth, and it was being, but it just would not go down because of the stress.
There's a lot,
I would not be able to sleep. By 6 o'clock, by then I had a boss who would insist on calling me by 6 in the morning. Today we need to do, so I was ever, and remember it's a new job. I'm ever on edge.
Oh, wow.
So of course you start struggling with supply.
That's true.
Thankfully, I transitioned to a different place within about 6 months. Because of course it had become untenable. And then of course now when you faint in the office post, of course she's incapable. She's not able. The men are like, now you see. And of course when, with humanitarian work, things happen quickly. We could be in a meeting right now and they say, you need to be in Kakamega in 3 hours.
That's true.
The men are able to pick their bags, and tell their wives, pack for me, I'm coming. Ruth Hema is thinking,
baby,
my baby,
breast milk,
who is able to accompany me. So I'm there negotiating for, can we do this tomorrow? Can I follow you tomorrow? Can I? Then you're traveling in cars. You know how those humanitarian cars are?
Yes.
And you have probably male colleagues. And how do you say, please stop? I need to pump. Because for like, we are hitting the road 6 hours, Voi. Or in 8 hours, we are hitting Kakamega, you know? So all those, being able to advocate for yourself. And that's why I say it needs a community. Has the policy impacted those who are around me enough to say, no, we have a colleague here who is this way. And we need to.
Absolutely.
If I go to the breastfeeding room, I remember the times you'd carry and you're expected to go with your laptop. Because see, you want to, And Josephine, when she's teaching us how to breastfeed, or when we're teaching moms, we'll say, look at a picture of your baby.
Like, because that helps.
Take time to relax so that the milk comes out.
It helps with like,
and with my laptop, son is probably at the window. Are you almost done? Oh, where's Ruth? She's in the, and you hear the commercial, she's probably in the room.
Okay.
So those are the challenges.
Absolutely. Because you see, at this time, you need to be in a certain frame of mind to also help with the milk, like coming down, and still emphasizing on that kind of support. And I like the fact that you said at the end of the day, you need to be productive at work. Absolutely. But you have a child. I mean, we cannot escape that fact.
And I think
there's a child that needs to be taken care of, right?
Yeah.
So for Josephine, and I'll come back to you in a sec. But Josephine, in terms of emphasizing that kind of support, and especially amongst colleagues, even the males who can stand up for their female colleagues and say, listen, she needs some time to go and pump.
So
like how do we
sensitization in terms of when you're setting up the policy? So now there are actually organizations that do that. There's one called CAMFEB. There's also the Kenya Association for Breastfeeding. So what we do is that we work with HR, but also you need to sensitize the entire workforce. You need to identify a champion who is going to be there, and they're the ones who are going to now advocate. You know, Ruth here is a very assertive woman. Most people aren't, especially most moms, first-time moms, depending on your cadre, you might be there, you're afraid of even asking, demanding your 1 hour of protected time, saying, I have 1 hour, I can go every 3 hours for 20 minutes, I need that time. But like she's saying, you're in the middle of a meeting and you can't step out because of what is going to be the perception and all that. But that is where now someone like a breastfeeding champion comes in. You have to have the full backing of HR, whether they are men, women, because HR sometimes can be brutal regardless of the gender. For them it's about productivity and numbers. But understanding your productivity does come from protecting this woman's time, protecting this woman's space, Even just things like flexi time, There's another bill that we were trying to have passed, the breastfeeding bill. It would be of now 2019. And that one is the one that would even come together with penalties. If you don't have a room, you're penalized. And then just having employers to understand your person can work from home. We don't all need to be sitting there. COVID showed us that. So why can't moms have that 6 months where you have your 3 months paid maternity and the rest, yes, you come back to work, but it's flexi. Do I really have to come into work every single day? And I'll probably spend the time on Instagram or Facebook, but my line manager just wants to see me there to know that I'm productive, So it's that sensitization and really asking these people, show me the numbers, show me your argument for having this woman here when she can do just as well working from home. Because even being a stay-at-home mom is a job. So people assume that because I'm not in the office and I have an infant, that I'm just watching TV and watching telenovelas, like I'm not productive. But it's not. We work as well, running a home. Like literally we have 2 jobs. You go to the office and then you come back and you run your second job,
Absolutely.
So a woman can work effectively from home.
It's possible. It really is possible.
Sensitization, advocacy, and awareness.
Absolutely. We have our beautiful baby over there. Let's just call him Baby X.
Baby Toto.
And of course, we'll come back to you, Josephine, because like we said earlier on, when it comes to breastfeeding, most of us would assume that it's a natural thing. You just put the baby on the breast and then that's it. They know how to latch and all those things. So we'll come back to you to just show us how, and especially for the first-time moms who are watching us and thinking, hey, I'm dreading that moment. or expectant mothers as well. But Ruth, let me just talk to you. In going through all this, and especially in a place where, again, like you said, it was mostly male-dominated, there was not that kind of support that you needed. Did this weigh you? Like, what impact did it have on your mental, your physical health?
It definitely took a toll. It did take a toll. And one thing I'm thankful for is that I think I stayed in that place for just about 6 months.
Okay.
Then I transitioned to where I am currently, which is extremely supportive. I think this second time round, I have my 5-month-old baby, but I have the flexi time. I have a boss who says, you don't need to travel. Do you really need to? And COVID has taught us that we don't necessarily have to do everything within the office. And I think what she says about the policy is important. And what I'd like to also say about workplaces is that it may not always be feasible for every workplace to have their own station.
That's true.
because sometimes floor space has already been given out, sometimes, you know, but we can even collaborate as organizations.
Oh, yes. Or
and
maybe
see, can we have it in a building?
Informal, yeah, or an informal maybe area. For example, Mama Mboga, for example, she has to go to work.
Oh, yes.
Right? Or maybe, like, again, we all know this in informal, quote-unquote, workspaces that people have to go and work at the same time. Make sure that you also need to make sure that your baby has enough milk supply. So I hear you.
So I think there's a shared one. In some of the markets have started in Nairobi, where there are rooms in some of the buildings where one can go. But in terms of mental health, yes, I did struggle. And I think because as a career woman, you tend to maybe take on too much. And of course, for me, my mental health at some point was I would cry so much. And then I'd try to hide it from my mother. I'm trying to hide it from everyone. But I think the support that I had, again, my doctor, the pediatrician, Prof. Mala, very nice. He'll keep encouraging, you know, the baby's putting on weight, you're doing the right thing. Your husband is encouraging you, your parents are encouraging you. But I cannot negate the fact that it was very hard.
Absolutely.
Extremely mentally taxing. And that's one thing that mothers need to be prepared about. And what changed for me was how I practice with mothers now, how I practice with communities now. It's no longer the theory of put the baby at the breast, this is the position. No, we need to tell people that it will be hard to wake up every 1.5 hours. Because breast milk goes through their system. Even right now, I'm struggling. The child won't sleep. It is difficult to tell someone that you may go through helpers consecutively. It's difficult to tell someone your marriage relationship will need a different kind of whatever. You'll face a lot of challenges and backlash from fellow women.
That's true.
I have never experienced backlash from men, but fellow women, friends, who will tell you, oh, you're working. Why? You should be at home with the baby. But those who are sitting at home and are able to take care of the baby, why aren't you working? You never win as a woman.
Doomed if you do, doomed if you
your
do.
mental health needs you being able to just take it all and tell yourself, okay, I'm doing the best I can for my baby. It takes a lot. If you need therapy, I say, please look for it. If you need help, there's all sorts of help right now available.
Absolutely. And it goes to, I think, what we said earlier on. I think, I don't know if it was you or Jasmine who said, at the end of the day, you cannot do it alone as a mom.
Oh, no,
you really can't. You really can't. You need help. Okay, so Jasmine, then, just in case someone is watching us and thinking, I really understand why you're championing for exclusive breastfeeding, but can you show us how? How do we do it? How do we latch? How do we sort of like teach the baby to latch, or what exactly happens?
Exactly, it is teaching the baby, because when the baby is born, they have no idea. They haven't breastfed before. You're a first-time mom. You haven't breastfed anyone before. You know, so this thing of it's a natural act is actually, I think it's just a protective thing that we've had over generations, right? But if you think about it, like if I think about like my mom and her mom, they had a village, they had a community, so you were able to see someone breastfeeding. But now how many people do we see just seated outside breastfeeding? Very few. You know, and then we are so isolated. Exactly. Like, you're being judged. So how many people can we model? Because, you know, we learn through modeling, even as adults. As children, definitely, children learn through copying. Exactly. But so do we. So the more we see other women breastfeeding before we have our own children, the more we would understand. And the more honest we are about the whole journey, the easier it becomes, so that my expectations are managed as a new mom.
Absolutely.
You see? So that I'm able to understand, okay, it's not going to be easy. I'm going to need support, not just from my partner, poor man who has no idea what's going on, but has to handle all your emotions, also try and figure out why is the baby crying, why are you crying? But you see, if you now had someone else to come in and stand in that gap, who is able to do so because they have walked that journey before. It makes it a lot easier. But one of the basic things about breastfeeding is this.
Turn it so that the camera can see. I don't know how you're going to see.
So how do I need to sit? Let me see.
Okay. Oh, yes. Oh, no. So, the camera is over there.
So I think that way should be okay, right?
Oh,
okay.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah,
yes.
Perfect. Okay, all right. So the thing to make sure is that, number one, that your baby is facing your body.
Okay.
So why? Because when we are eating, we face our food, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So that we make sure that our neck does not turn.
Yeah.
So the same thing with the baby. So the ear and the shoulder and the hip are all in one line, right?
Okay.
So that's just to make sure that there is no obstruction and the baby is able to swallow easily.
All right.
What else do we need to do? We need to make sure that the baby is at the same level as the breast, right? So there. Yeah. Right. And then we bring the baby in. So this hold is quite a... It's a very efficient hold if you're able to hold the baby like this, but it takes practice. All really this takes practice, especially as a new mom, which is why it's nice to also have a healthcare worker there with you who can spend at least half an hour to walk you through this, not just weka mtoto kwa matiti.
Okay.
Like somebody
moms leaning in.
And exactly, ideally you don't lean in because I can't sit like this for 20 minutes.
That's true.
You know? So I also need to be seated comfortably. Bring the baby to the breast.
Okay.
And that allows for a deep latch.
Okay.
What is this deep latch we keep talking about? It's like if you put your thumb in your mouth, you want the nipple to end up, your nipple to end up in the middle of the baby's mouth, where it is soft.
Okay.
It's the widest part of the mouth, so that if the nipple ends up there, it means that there'll be less friction.
Okay.
But most of the times, we are so happy when the baby just holds on to something and is suckling apparently, but what the baby has done is just held on to the tip.
Okay.
And that's very painful because it means that your nipple has ended up at the front of the baby's mouth.
Okay.
And that's where we have the hard ridges and the smallest gap between the tongue and the palate. We want the nipple at the middle where there's the biggest gap between the tongue and the palate. So I always tell people, wash your hands, put your thumb in your mouth.
Okay.
And the natural way for a deep latch is exactly if you put your thumb in your mouth, because the tip of your thumb will be right at the center.
Maybe I'm just thinking, is the baby going, like, when they chop?
No, because it's nice and soft.
Okay.
And that's why we call it breastfeeding, because the baby does not need a nipple to breastfeed.
Okay.
The nipple is just like the outlet. It's the straw.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is the most important thing. So the way you place your baby actually dictates how you're going to get that deep latch. So you have to make sure that your baby is facing your breast at the same level at the breast, and you just bring the baby in. And I know I'm saying just, but it's not that easy.
It's not that easy.
It's practice.
Okay.
But those are the basics of putting, of latching the baby.
Is concerned.
Yeah.
All right. And of course, right here at Nation, again, we're lucky that we have a lactation station. And of course, we'll leave you with you know, those pictures so that you see when we say what exactly does it look like, what does it need to have. So we'll leave it with those pictures. But Ruth, very quickly, so understand and being there, we know in terms of in a not so good supportive environment and to now a good supportive environment, what is it that you can tell the women, and especially those ones who are like, man, imagine our office, we do not have anything like that, or I do not have that luxury of affording, for example, a breast pump, or I do not have enough milk. Like, it's a lot for one to think about. So having gone through that, and I want to believe that now you're in a much better space, but mentally, physically, and everything you know, involved. What would you say to that woman watching us and thinking, how do I do it?
I think for me it's three things. One that we don't talk about is how much of a commitment breastfeeding is. Yeah. We give the theory. We'll come in and say, latch the baby, do this, do that. But we need to begin to talk about it's physically taxing, it's mentally taxing, it's psychologically taxing, and begin to prepare women for that and support that, and support the mental health aspect of it. Two, help women understand that it is a sacrifice to breastfeed. There are many hoops you'll have to go through. Your life will have to change for that season. And I think for those of us who are probably career or want to do club, it's a hard thing because I want my social life. It will have to change for those 6 months. The way I work has to change. I may have to make very funny decisions sometimes. Like I know moms who will have the baby brought to them in the car at certain intervals, or you're moving nearer to work, or you have to carry your baby with you all the time, or you have to pump. So the sacrifice is there. And the third thing I'd encourage is to know that there is facilities and help out there,
absolutely,
everywhere that you look. Some paid for, some free. Going to any government facility, we are there. Health workers are being trained every day. If you can't afford paid help, walk into any government facility, ask for the nutritionist, you'll get help.
Help is there. Okay, we have to go. Josephine, can I just give you 10 seconds? Okay. As far as policy, just 10 seconds, because we literally have to be out of this place. What would you say? As far as policies, maybe to moms as well.
I think we definitely need to continue with what is called the warm chain. We have to advocate government, we have to advocate our employers, we have to call out the healthcare workers, demand your time, demand what is owed to you, because it is your right. Absolutely. It is the baby's right to breastfeed, and it is your right to be supported through that breastfeeding process. And like she said, there's a lot of help out there. The Kenya Association for Breastfeeding. I work with community health volunteers, training them again on the same thing. The government is really trying. MOH and MS, they're all really trying to make sure that breastfeeding becomes a well-supported public health issue.
And it should, as it should. I hear you. Thank you very much, Josephine Munene, maternal, infants and child nutrition specialist, as well as Ruth Kaima. Thank you very much for coming by today. We asked you a question earlier on, so let's get to hear some of your feedback as far as exclusive breastfeeding and is it practical for working moms. Russia's Nango says, leave alone working moms. Some mothers introduce food to their kids before 6 months due to the pressure from immediate family members. I remember one telling me, lisha mtoi, mnadanganya na madaktari na enzi zetu tulilisha at 2 months. And I was like, this is me and this is my kid. I will do what I know is best for him. I did exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months and I was happy to achieving it, all right? And then Kate Ndungu says, it can only work if the workplace is mom-friendly, unless an office has designed an area where mom can express milk, plus a fridge to store the milk till home time. I did exclusive breastfeeding. Thankfully, I was allowed to report to work an hour late and leave an hour earlier, all right? And then Lucy Kamau says, yes, it worked for me, 2 babies, but requires determination and selflessness. I hear you. And then Nyarosiri Kisumu says, yes, if your workplace is nearby, you express in the morning, then breastfeed the remaining milk in the breast. Then we'll come back at lunch and I missed the rest. I'm so sorry. All right, Midono Services. It is not working as some introduce the baby to other meals at 4 months. All right, thank you very much for your feedback. The conversation continues on our social media platforms. That is at NTV Kenya and at NTV. That is on Facebook and on Twitter as well as at Lubembe_Winiba. We have to say goodbye. Thank you very much for staying with us. Thank you very much to my panel. Such an amazing conversation we had today. And of course, we need to have this more often, all right? But until tomorrow morning, same time, same place, have yourselves a lovely day. And remember to stay safe. Goodbye for now.